Ladies, gentlemen and Khajiit, I am Yusril, and since Bethesda were kind enough to drop the latest trailer for the Elder Scrolls Online into my inbox, I thought I'd go through it in detail and present the results. So let's get straight to business. The first scene we get is a landscape shot, either a temperate winter or a tundra climate. Note the Akaviri architecture in the shot. The Dragon Guard, the order that will become the Blades under Tiber Septim, are active in this point at Tamriel's history, and given what was said about the player's storyline in the Cold Harbour trailer, and a couple of details that I may have picked up on later on in this teaser as well, they may have good reason to take an interest in the player. However, it's also worth noting that the game is set shortly after the fall of the Akaviri Potentate, which might also explain the style of the buildings. Also, note the pretty water effects. The second scene is in Morrowind, with the red sky suggesting it's on Vardenfell proper, or at least near enough to Red Mountain for ash storms to be present. The building in the background to the left has Redoran architecture, but of interest is what appears to be a guard at the shrine. Assuming it isn't a statue, he's holding what appears to be a polearm of some description, something that hasn't really been seen in Elder Scrolls games before. Whether we're going to get to use spears, halberds and the like as a result of this remains to be seen. May just be wishlisting, who knows. Another location shift, and to judge by the architecture we're in Redguard territory, most likely Hammerfell. There's relatively little here beyond eye candy, but note the horses. Aside from giving an idea of scale to the building, there's also the implication that we'll have the use of these as personal transport, a la Oblivion, Skyrim, and yes, World of Warcraft. Whether the devs are going to do an Age of Conan and allow for mounted combat and cavalry remains to be seen, since so far the only action we've seen has been infantry and siege artillery. This also comes back to the idea of polearms, because those were primarily deployed as anti-cavalry weapons, so the two kinda go together. Again, note of caution here, this may just be me wishlisting based on minor details in the video. That caution is going to come up multiple times all the way through this. Next up we have what appears to be classic Imperial architecture, except the Empire we know from the older Elder Scrolls games, which are canonically set several hundred years after TES Online, doesn't really exist yet. We're in Breton territory, probably High Rock and maybe even Wayrest itself, to judge both from the style of armour on the statue and also from the triple knot symbol worked into the architecture of that building. That symbol seems to be the personal emblem of High King Emeric, and it's unlikely to be found anywhere else, at least not without torches, pitchforks and a small lynch mob being involved. Moving on, the trailer cuts to a brief internal scene of what appears to be either a hall or, given the altar-like structures, a chapel. Possibly to the 8 Divines. The 9th Divine, Tiber Septim, won't be along for a few centuries yet. I'm not sure what to make of the symbol on the banners though. It could be a reference to the 8, it could be a guild, be it player or NPC symbol, or it could just be a minor faction in the background. It certainly doesn't match anything I've seen before. And next up, if I'm right, we're in Skyrim. The giants a clue, as again is the architecture. If, and it's a fairly big if, we are, then the background has what may be a bit of titillation in it. If we are in Skyrim, then that huge peak is most likely the throat of the world. Now, this could just be me seeing what I want to see, but look at this blur just below the peak. It doesn't quite match the rest of the mountain, and it's in roughly the right place to be High Hrothgar. Now bear in mind the Cold Harbour trailer, in which Bethesda said that the player's soul was somehow special enough for Molag Bal to nick it and store it in high security. Can anyone else say Dragonborn? And more to the point, yell Fusro Dar? Oh yeah, and giant. Batter up. We know from what Bethesda have said that Manimarco is going to be the dragon to Molag Bal, and like all good necromancers it seems he's built himself a fortress, maybe several. Note the traditional necromantic decorations of skulls and blue flames, cold of course. I don't know what it is with wizards and towers, you'd swear they were compensating for something. Moving on again, note the ship, are Bethesda hinting at ocean travel here? And it's nitpicking of me, but this guy had better know someone capable of stitching his fingers back on. After what might be a taunt emote and a couple of character shots, we finally get some action. This looks like a new enemy type, Daedric by the look of it, with the core anatomy looking like a Daedroth of some kind. Daedroth don't usually have wings though. A bit more plot here. Again from Bethesda we know that Mologbal is using these dark anchors in an effort to drag Tamriel into a merger with his own realm of Coldharbour, ushering in the usual end of the world, apocalypse, no more cheese, etc, etc. A couple of points of note here. First, the anchor seems to need a pre-prepared site to deploy, so the implication is that, for gameplay at least, there will be fixed points in the world where these battles occur as the players try to destroy the anchors. The second is the engravings on the stone. The row of 4 glyphs facing the camera simply reads OPQR in sequence from left to right, with an A glyph legible above those. As for the glowing letters, the column nearest the camera seems to read LVHARBOUR from top to bottom. So either LV Harbour means something in the context, which seems a bit too much of a coincidence given the description of these things as anchors, or parts of the inscription are meant to be read across, parts down, or maybe it's just random scribblings in Daedric, because hey, this thing was most likely built by a bunch of lunatic necromancers. A couple of shots of Coldharbour follow. Mologbal does love his slaves. After a quick meet the hero shot, we get a flame Atronach with a couple of scamps off to the left and a few cropped action shots. Note that we can't see the UI here, or anywhere else. However, this does give us the traditional first-person perspective and a very brief bit of dual wielding. It's tempting to assume that the control interface will be similar to that of Skyrim, not least because that game and Oblivion were, in some respects, a massive proof of concept for the Elder Scrolls on console. However, the parachute does not yet seem to have been invented. Hopefully there's some soft water at the bottom of that drop. We also have a Haugraven who does a mean line in curries, the uber-winged Daedroth thing again, and another first-person shot. In this case, swinging a mace in one hand and unlimited power in the other, further suggesting that the Elder Scrolls look and feel is going to be very similar to that of Skyrim. Also a necromantic leash type, maybe Manny Marco himself, something that is positively not a Naga sorceress with the serial numbers filed off, and a proper Daedroth, who probably wasn't there of his own volition given the chains. Mr. Happy makes another appearance, along with a lot of dead horses, a couple of red shirts, and what appears to be a new Frost Atronach. We're then treated to a bit more first-person action and another short Daedric inscription. For those who are interested, that inscription reads PUV on the top line and QGH on the bottom. Could be the Daedric for off switch, given the detailing above it, I suppose. We get a brief shot of a flesh golem with the leash in the background from earlier, same fight, before an epic PvP shots involving trebuchets, because hey, walking up and asking politely isn't going to work. The devs are of course pushing the PvP pretty hard, especially the epic scale stuff, and we'll see how well the engine can cope as we get nearer release. Of course, if we're going to have Fusrodar as a knockback, then a counterpart Get Over Here ability was pretty much inevitable. Cue the giant magic chain, and somebody who apparently stood in the fire. Add in a few more brief action shots, including one of a Sphere Centurion, so it looks like we're going Dwemer delving at some point then, even if that does seem to be in an overland setting in the video, and we get to the current release estimate of spring next year, as well as the intended formats, PC, Macs, Xbox One and PS4. There's no mention of the PS3 or the Xbox 360 though, which makes me wonder what kind of PC or Mac is going to be required to make this game playable. I also have to wonder how they're going to handle cross-format, given the claims made regarding everyone being on a single mega server. Are we all really going to be on the same server, or is there going to be format segregation? And if we are all going to be on the same server, how does the notion of mouse and keyboard v console controller play into PvP balance. And that brings us to the end of the trailer, and thus to the end of my musings on it. I have been Yusril, and 90% of that video was probably wishlisting, misinterpretation, and therefore total bollocks. Nevertheless, I hope it was entertaining, vaguely useful, and that, if there's a next time, I'll see you soon. Farewell.